Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. This podcast discusses the book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert B. Cialdini. And welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tearing open a really fascinating topic. It touches every single interaction we have, the psychology of influence. How do we get others to say yes? And maybe more importantly, how do others get us to say yes, sometimes without us even, realizing it?
It's definitely a deep dive into those automatic triggers, the ones that guide our decisions. Our source here, Dr. Robert Cialdini's classic book, Influence, it really explores these fundamental psychological principles.
Yeah.
He talks about them as click-whir responses, like inputs that trigger these automatic, almost programmed behaviors.
Click-whir. I love that phrase. It captures just how automatic it feels, doesn't it? Like our brains are just, running on autopilot sometimes.
And, often for good reason. I mean, think about the world we live in, saturated with information, decisions everywhere. These shortcuts are incredibly useful. They're almost necessary.
Right. Our brains can't possibly analyze every single piece of data consciously.
Exactly. We rely on these sort of pre-programmed tapes, these mental heuristics to make quick judgments.
Like that story Cialdini tells about the turquoise jewelry. The shop owner couldn't sell it, even kept lowering the price.
Right, and then only when she mistakenly doubled the price.
It started flying off the shelf.
Yeah. The shortcut was expensive equals good. People didn't analyze the quality. The high price was the trigger. Click.
It's amazing.
And it's not just humans. Lower animals, they use these fixed action patterns triggered by specific features, too. Like a mother turkey is triggered by the cheep cheep sound.
Oh, yeah.
She'll nurture pretty much anything making that sound, even a stuffed polecat, apparently. But if it doesn't make the sound, she might even attack it. Fireflies mimic other species' signals to lure prey. It's basic trigger stuff.
And we have similar pre-programmed tapes, like that famous Xerox machine study. People waiting in line were asked, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine?" And only about 60% agreed.
Yeah, something like that. But when the request included the word because, even with a totally obvious reason.
Like, because I have to make some copies?
Exactly. With just 5 pages, compliance shot up to 93%. Nearly everyone agreed. The word because itself was the trigger, the click, even if the reason following it added nothing new.
It just signaled reason follows, and that was enough for the automatic yes.
Precisely. Which highlights how easily these triggers can be activated. And Cialdini makes a really crucial point here. Compliance professionals, salespeople, advertisers, fundraisers, negotiators, they understand these principles really, really well.
They use them expertly, harnessing their power, sometimes with very little personal effort, almost invisibly, because the principles just work automatically on us.
Yeah, they sort of commission the psychological principle, and the principle does the heavy lifting for them.
So our goal today in this deep dive for you is to really unpack these 6 core principles. We want you to recognize them when you see them, understand how they might be used to influence you, and maybe think about how you can navigate interactions more consciously. Perhaps even apply them ethically yourself, but understanding the power involved.
It's really about gaining awareness and a degree of control. Moving from being maybe an unwitting target to being an informed participant in these influence exchanges.
Okay, let's dive in.
Yeah.
The first principle is reciprocity, the old give and take, and, sometimes take.
Right. It's that deeply ingrained rule that says we should try to repay in kind what another person has provided us.
And this principle is incredibly powerful, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Every human society trains its members in this rule. There's this universal dislike for people who violate it, the moocher, the ingrate. That feeling of obligation can be really intense.
It's even in our language, right? Like much obliged, literally meaning I feel obligated.
Exactly. And this obligation, it can lead to compliance even when you might normally refuse. It can actually overpower other factors, like whether you even like the person making the request.
Wait, really? Stronger than liking? How do we know that?
Well, the Reagan study illustrated this beautifully. Subjects were in an art appreciation experiment with someone named Joe, who was actually part of the study.
Okay.
Joe would leave the room during breaks. In one condition, he came back with 2 Cokes and gave one to the subject just as a small favor. In the other condition, he came back empty-handed.
Simple enough setup?
Yeah. Then later, Joe mentioned he was selling raffle tickets for 25 cents each and asked the subject if they'd buy some.
The request after the potential favor.
Precisely. And the results. Subjects who got the free soda bought twice as many raffle tickets as those who didn't. But here's the kicker. Reagan also measured how much they liked Joe.
And
Liking did increase ticket sales a bit, sure. But the free soda, the favor, doubled sales compared to the no-favor group, even for people who said they didn't like Joe much at all.
wow, so reciprocity trumped liking.
Significantly. It shows that even if someone is maybe unwelcome or you don't particularly care for them, a small initial favor can still make you feel obligated to comply later.
Like those Hare Krishna folks in the 70s giving out flowers.
That's a classic example. They'd often press the flower into your hand, making it hard to refuse. Then, once you'd accepted it, that feeling of having received something, even unwanted, triggered the reciprocity rule before they asked for a donation.
And this isn't just one-on-one stuff, it works in bigger systems too.
Oh, absolutely. Politics is just steeped in it. Log rolling, the exchange of favors, votes, compromises, it's fundamental. Lyndon Johnson's success in the Senate was partly down to his meticulous tracking of favors owed and favors due.
So an unexpected vote from a politician might just be a favor being repaid down the line.
Often, yes. And what feels particularly potent, maybe even a little unfair, is that this obligation kicks in even for uninvited favors.
Right, you don't have to have asked for it to feel indebted.
Exactly. The rule just says repay what someone provided, not what you requested. The disabled American veterans found this out. When they started including unsolicited address labels in their donation requests,
Donation rates went up.
nearly doubled compared to mailings without the labels. People got something they didn't ask for, but still felt that nudge to give back.
And that WWI story Cialdini includes about the German soldier. That's just incredible. His mission was to capture an enemy soldier for interrogation.
Right. He found one, easily disarmed him while the guy was eating. Simple mission, seemingly.
But then the captured soldier offered him a piece of his bread.
Just a piece of bread, a simple human gesture. And the German soldier couldn't do it. He couldn't complete the mission after accepting the bread. He went back empty-handed.
It's almost unbelievable. Reciprocity overriding military duty in that moment.
It just shows how deep this impulse runs. And this principle also forms the basis of a really effective compliance tactic, the rejection then retreat technique.
Ah, the old door in the face.
Exactly. You make a large request first, one you fully expect to be refused.
Like asking for a huge donation.
Right. Then, after the refusal, you retreat to a smaller, more reasonable request, which is actually what you wanted all along.
And the retreat itself feels like a concession.
Precisely. Your retreat is seen as you giving something up, so the reciprocity rule kicks in, making the other person feel obligated to make a concession in return by agreeing to your smaller requests.
Like the Boy Scout asking you to buy expensive $5 calendars. You say no, and then he asks, well, would you just buy a $1 candy bar then?
And suddenly, that $1 seems perfectly reasonable, almost a bargain. You feel like you should meet him halfway. It works surprisingly often.
The book even suggests it might have played a role in Watergate. That seems like a stretch.
Well, think about how the break-in plan got approved. Liddy's initial proposals were apparently wild. $1 million, then $500,000. Huge, crazy plan.
Which were obviously rejected.
Right. Then came the final, much smaller $250,000 plan. Magruder testified that people weren't exactly thrilled with it, but
After hearing the $1 million ideal.
yeah, after starting at the grandiose sum of $1 million, we thought that probably $250,000 would be an acceptable figure. The refusal of the huge requests made the final, smaller one seem like a concession from Liddy, possibly triggering that subconscious need to reciprocate and approve something.
That's, wow, a chilling thought. And this tactic, rejection then retreat, it has other benefits for the requester too, right? Besides just getting the yes more often.
It does. Studies show that the targets of this tactic actually feel more responsible for the final agreement.
Because they feel like they influence the outcome. Like they bargain the person down.
Exactly. They feel they were part of shaping the deal because the requester made that apparent concession. And this feeling of responsibility leads to two things: greater satisfaction with the agreement and a higher likelihood of actually living up to the agreement. They're more likely to follow through. The UCLA bargaining study showed just that. More satisfaction, more follow-through.
So they buy the candy bar, and they feel better about buying it, and they're less likely to, I don't know, complain later. It's a powerful combo.
It really is.
So how do you protect yourself? How do you say no to reciprocity, especially these tactics?
Well, the key Cialdini suggests is awareness, vigilance. If someone offers you a genuine favor, great. Accept it and understand you might owe one back later. That's just normal social exchange.
But if the initial offer or gift or concession feels like it's just a setup, a trick,
then you need to recognize it for what it is. The rule is favors are met with favors. It does not say tricks are met with favors.
So mentally redefine the initial action.
Exactly, or redefine it as a compliance tactic, a sales device, not a genuine gift or concession. That fire inspector offering a free check, then launching into a sales pitch, that's not a gift. It's step one of a sales process.
But once you see it that way.
You're psychologically free from the obligation. The reciprocity rule doesn't apply to sales tactics. You can then evaluate the actual request, do I need these alarms,
Right.
based on its merits, not on feeling you owe them something.
That mental reframing is crucial. Don't let the click war happen without thinking.
Okay, principle number 2, commitment and consistency. This taps into our deep-seated need to be consistent and also to appear consistent with what we've already done or said or decided.
Right. Once we make a choice or take a stand, especially if it's public or required effort, we feel this internal and external pressure to stick with it.
It's a very strong psychological force. Psychologists see consistency as a central motivator. It acts as a heuristic, a shortcut for decisions. I decided this before, so I'll stick with it. It saves mental energy.
And it makes us seem more reliable and rational to others.
Definitely. Think about horse race bettors. They feel much more confident after placing the bet than just before. The act of commitment solidifies the belief.
Or that story about Sarah and Tim. Sarah committed to Tim, chose him over someone else, broke off an engagement.
And even though Tim didn't really change the things she wanted him to change, like stopping drinking, years later, Sarah was more devoted. She'd rationalized her choice, convinced herself it was the right one, to stay consistent with that initial difficult commitment.
She wasn't just sticking to it. She was actively changing her own feelings to match the commitment.
Exactly. It's a form of self-persuasion to maintain consistency. Like the transcendental meditation example, people who paid significant money for TM became staunch defenders of it, even when its scientific basis was challenged.
Their financial commitment, the effort involved, it made them need to believe it was valuable to stay consistent.
They had to justify the investment to themselves.
And then there's that clever, maybe cynical trick the toy manufacturers pull at Christmas time.
Ah, yes! The one designed to make parents buy twice. They heavily advertise specific, really desirable toys before Christmas. Kids get excited, parents promise them.
But then the manufacturers deliberately undersupply the stores.
Right. So parents can't find that toy. They end up buying substitute gifts for Christmas morning. The key toy is scarce.
Okay.
Then, after Christmas, boom, they start advertising that desirable toy again. Kids see it, remember the promise.
You promised.
Exactly. And the parents, driven by the need to be consistent with their promise, now go out and buy the toy they couldn't find before, boosting those January, February sales figures.
The promise is the commitment. The second purchase is the consistency. It's kind of brilliant and slightly awful.
It's a direct play on the consistency principle. The key trigger, the click for this automatic consistency is getting that initial commitment, getting someone to take a stand or go on record.
And written commitments are particularly powerful here.
Very much so. They require more effort, first off. And they provide physical evidence, making them easier to make public. The Korean War Chinese POW camps. That's a really chilling example of how this was used.
Right. They used that lenient policy, avoiding the brutality seen in WWII POW camps, but somehow got much higher rates of collaboration from American POWs.
They started incredibly small, getting soldiers to make tiny, seemingly harmless commitments, like just copying a sentence, then maybe writing down a very mild criticism of the U.S., or something vaguely positive about communism, stuff like, the USA is not perfect.
Things that were hard to argue with, maybe.
Exactly. Trivial concessions. But then they'd get the POWs to read these statements aloud to fellow prisoners, or even broadcast them.
Making the commitment public.
Yes. And because the soldiers had written it themselves, often under only mild pressure, they started to internalize it. To remain consistent with the act of writing it, their self-image began to shift. Well, I wrote this. Maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe I'm not totally anti-communist.
And that opened the door to more significant collaboration later.
It did. To stay consistent with that slightly altered self-perception, the public nature was absolutely key. That Deutsch and Gerard experiment proved its students who publicly committed to their initial judgments were way more resistant to changing their minds later, even with contradictory evidence, compared to those who committed privately or not at all.
Which is why things like weight loss clinics, having clients write down goals and share them with friends works. Public accountability.
Like that woman quitting smoking, she told everyone important to her. Even when she got annoyed with some of them later, the thought of being inconsistent with her public declaration kept her going.
Another really powerful example is group initiation rites, hazing in fraternities, intense military training, tribal rituals. These often involve hardship, pain, embarrassment.
Yeah, why do groups do that? It seems like it would drive people away.
The theory Cialdini presents is that it's about consistency. People who endure a lot to join a group end up valuing that group more.
To justify the effort.
Exactly. They convince themselves the group must be really special, really worthwhile to make sense of the hardship they endured. I went through hell for this. It must be amazing. To think otherwise would create cognitive dissonance, inconsistency with their commitment.
Right. The Aronson and Mills study supported this. The more severe the initiation, the more the participants liked the group afterwards. Even West Point resisted getting rid of tough hazing practices, believing that hardship builds commitment.
So the greater the effort or sacrifice, the stronger the commitments hold on future behavior.
Yes, especially when we feel we made the choice ourselves without strong outside pressure.
Like that Friedman experiment with the forbidden toy robot. Kids were given just a mild threat not to play with it. It's wrong, I'll be annoyed.
And weeks later, when the adult was gone, those kids still avoided the robot, even though it was tempting. But kids who got a severe threat, I'll be very angry, they only avoided it when the adult was watching.
So the mild threat was just enough to get them not to play, but not so strong they felt forced.
Right. It allowed them to take inner responsibility, to think, I guess I just don't want to play with it. They internalized the choice. That's huge for parenting or sales or any situation where you want lasting change, not just temporary compliance. Give just enough reason, but let the person feel they chose it.
And the lowball tactic plays on this internalized commitment, right?
Oh yeah, classic car sales technique. Offer a fantastic low price to get the customer to say yes. That's the initial commitment.
Get them invested, filling out forms, arranging finance, test driving.
Exactly. While they're doing that, they're mentally building all these new reasons why buying this car is a great idea. They're imagining driving it, showing it off.
Building their own justifications.
Right.
So.
Then the salesperson comes back and says, oh, sorry, my manager won't approve that price, or there was an error, or they add fees. The original low price, the initial advantage is removed.
But the customer often still buys it.
Frequently. Because the commitment has built its own support system. All those new justifications they generated are often enough to keep the decision in place, even though the reason they committed in the first place is now gone. They don't realize those supporting reasons might not have existed without that initial lowball.
That Iowa energy conservation study showed a similar effect too, right? People kept saving energy even after the initial incentive was removed because they'd committed internally.
The commitment took on a life of its own.
It's pretty sneaky.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid what Emerson called the hobgoblin of little minds, this foolish consistency?
Well, consistency itself isn't bad, remember? It saves mental effort. The defense is recognizing when it's being triggered automatically against your best interests.
Cialdini suggests listening to your gut, that stomach tightness.
Yes. If you feel that physical twinge, that pressure to agree just to be consistent with something you said or did earlier, pause. Recognize it. Ask yourself, was that initial commitment made freely, or was it maybe part of a setup, like that interviewer asking about your hobbies just to lead into a magazine pitch?
And if you spot the tactic,
You can even just name it. Hang on, are you trying to use my earlier statement to get me to agree now? Just exposing the tactic can disrupt it.
okay. And for situations where the gut feeling isn't clear, like Sarah justifying her commitment to Tim long after the fact.
There's that other question to ask yourself. Knowing what I know now, if I could go back, would I make the same commitment?
That shifts the focus from justifying the past to evaluating the present reality.
Exactly. It helps break free from consistency for consistency's sake, especially if the situation or your knowledge has changed.
Okay, that's helpful. Moving on to principle number 3, social proof.
Right. Truths are us's. The idea here is that we often decide what's correct behavior by looking at what other people are doing. If lots of people are doing something, it seems more valid, more appropriate.
It's a mental shortcut, especially when we're unsure. If everyone else is calm, maybe it's not an emergency. If everyone is buying that phone, it must be good.
It's why you hear canned laughter on sitcoms. Most people say they dislike laugh tracks.
How do they work?
They do. Hearing others laugh, even fake laughter, makes viewers rate the show as funnier and laugh more themselves. It's social proof, even when manufactured. It goes way back, like the French claques hired applauders in theaters.
And advertisers use it constantly. Fastest growing, largest selling. They're telling you lots of other people like this, so you should too.
Testimonials, especially from average people, tap into the same thing. People like me use this product, so it must be right for me. Charity telethons showing lists of donors, social proof. Nightclubs making people wait in line outside, social proof of popularity.
Sales consultant Carrot Robert apparently said, since 95% of the people are imitators, people are persuaded more by the actions of others than by any proof we can offer. That's pretty stark.
It highlights the power, and social proof is most powerful under certain conditions. One key condition is uncertainty.
When we're unsure, we look to others for answers.
Exactly. And this leads directly to the phenomenon of pluralistic ignorance, especially in emergencies with multiple bystanders.
Right, someone collapses, everyone looks around to see how others are reacting.
And if everyone else looks calm or uncertain, because they're also looking around, people collectively interpret the situation as not an emergency. Everyone's inaction reinforces everyone else's inaction.
Which can lead to tragic consequences, like the Catherine Genovese case, where 38 people supposedly witnessed her murder over time without calling the police.
Research by Latané and Darley suggested it wasn't just apathy, it was pluralistic ignorance combined with diffusion of responsibility. Everyone assumed someone else must have already called, or that maybe it wasn't as serious as it looked because nobody else was acting decisively.
Their experiments, like the staged seizure, showed that the more bystanders present, the less likely any single individual was to help.
Responsibility gets diffused across the group.
So if you're the one needing help in a crowd, what's the advice? How do you cut through that?
Be specific. Reduce the uncertainty. Don't just yell help, yell what the problem is, and crucially, assign responsibility.
Point someone out.
Yes. Lock eyes. Point. You in the blue shirt, call 911. Or, you with the backpack, I need you to help me lift this. This singles someone out, removes the diffusion of responsibility, and tells them exactly what to do.
And once one person starts acting, that provides social proof for others to jump into.
Exactly. It can break the paralysis. The other major factor amplifying social proof is similarity.
We're more influenced by people who seem like us.
Definitely. Their choices feel more relevant to our own situation. That's why ordinary people testimonials work so well in ads.
That lost wallet experiment showed this too, right? People were more likely to return a wallet if a letter inside indicated a similar person had tried to return it earlier.
And helping kids overcome fears, showing them videos of similar kids successfully dealing with the feared object, like a dog, was much more effective.
This similarity factor can have some really dark consequences, though, like the Werther effect.
Yeah, Dr. David Phillips's research on suicide contagion. When a suicide gets heavy media publicity, especially involving someone relatable, there's often a documented spike in similar deaths, other suicides, or even single car accidents in that area shortly after.
Imitative behavior driven by the social proof of a similar other's actions. It's chilling.
It really is. And perhaps the most extreme, horrifying example of uncertainty and similarity combining is the Jonestown mass suicide.
Jim Jones moved his followers to that isolated jungle settlement. Completely unfamiliar environment, creating massive uncertainty.
Right. Cut off from everything they knew, their only social reality was the group itself. Jones was the authority, but the behavior of their peers, people like them, became incredibly powerful social proof.
So when the prophecies failed, and Jones called for mass suicide.
In that state of extreme uncertainty and isolation, seeing others like them comply provided a powerful, terrible cue for action. It became the correct behavior within that closed, high-pressure system.
The isolation beforehand was key, creating that vacuum where social proof could take such hold.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do we defend ourselves against potentially misleading social proof?
Well, first, be aware of clearly faked social proof. Canned laughter, staged testimonials, tip jars salted with bills by the staff, those fake lines outside clubs. Recognize it as manipulation.
And maybe push back. Boycott the show, call out the business.
Cialdini suggests that. But more broadly, recognize that the crowd isn't always right. Sometimes everyone is just following everyone else based on social proof, not actual knowledge. Like those drivers following each other into a non-existent traffic jam.
Or the buffalo herd analogy.
Right. The defense is to consciously look up and around. Check the objective facts. Consult your own experience and judgment. Don't just follow the herd, especially when you feel uncertain or when everyone else seems just like you. Don't let the collective override your own senses.
That makes sense. You know, you're getting a really deep understanding of these powerful principles thanks to this deep dive brought to you by the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu.
Okay, principle number 4. Liking, the friendly thief. This one's pretty straightforward on the surface. We're more likely to say yes to people we know and like.
Seems obvious, right? We help our friends. We buy from people we connect with. And compliance pros know this and work hard to get us to like them.
Think about Tupperware parties. A big reason they're so effective is the social obligation to the hostess, who is usually a friend. You're buying partly because you like her.
MCI's calling circle strategy was built entirely on this, using existing friendships to cell phone service. That salesperson quote about it working 9 out of 10 times really says it all.
So how do they manufacture liking? Cialdini outlines several key factors. First, physical attractiveness.
Like it or not, attractive people have an advantage.
They do. We tend to automatically assign good qualities, talent, kindness, intelligence, honesty to good-looking people. It's called the halo effect.
And this bias starts early. Teachers thinking attractive kids are smarter.
Studies show that, yeah. And attractive people tend to get more help, more favorable treatment in legal settings. It's an unconscious bias that influences us.
Second factor, similarity. We like people who are like us.
Opinions, background, lifestyle, even little things like dress style. Salespeople are often trained to find or even create similarities. They'll mirror your posture, your speech patterns, comment on something they see you have in common.
Oh, like, oh, you're a golfer too, or my kids go to that school.
Exactly. Be a little wary if someone seems too much like you too quickly. It might be a tactic. That insurance study found matching on things like age, religion, politics, even smoking habits increased sales success.
Third, praise. Compliments work.
We have a real hunger for praise, and we tend to like people who provide it. Even if the flattery seems a bit obvious, it can still be effective, although sincere praise works best. We just tend to believe positive things said about us and like the source.
Okay, what else builds liking? Contact and cooperation.
Generally, familiarity breeds liking if the contact is positive. But simple contact isn't enough, especially if there's underlying conflict.
Like the school desegregation example, just putting kids together in competitive classrooms actually increased hostility at first.
Because the competition created an us versus them mindset. But when they introduced cooperation, like with Aronson's jigsaw classroom technique,
Where kids had to work together interdependently to complete a task.
yes, each student had a piece of the puzzle. They needed each other to succeed. That shifted the dynamic entirely. Cooperation fostered liking and reduced prejudice significantly.
The Robbers Cave experiment with the Boy Scouts showed the same pattern. Competition led to hostility, but shared goals requiring cooperation brought them together.
Working together towards common goals is a powerful way to build bonds and liking. The flip side, using contrast, is seen in the good cop, bad cop routine.
Right. The bad cop is hostile, creating stress. Then the good cop seems reasonable, maybe even sympathetic.
Making the suspect feel the good cop is an ally, someone they like and trust, increasing the chances they'll comply or confess to the friend.
And the last major factor is conditioning and association.
We come to like or dislike things simply because they get associated with positive or negative experiences or other things we already like or dislike.
Like the luncheon technique. People are more persuaded while eating.
Yes, the positive feelings from the food get transferred unconsciously to the message and the messenger.
Celebrity endorsements work the same way. Linking a product to a liked celebrity transfers those positive feelings.
Exactly. Even if the celebrity knows nothing about the product. Politicians use celebrity endorsements too. It's all about association.
Even negative associations work, like weather forecasters getting blamed for bad weather.
People just associate the messenger with the message, even if it's illogical. That poor weatherman getting threatened by a farmer.
In our connection to sports teams, that's huge.
Oh yeah, we strongly identify with winning teams. We won. It's called burgeoning basking in reflected glory.
But when they lose,
They lost.
we distance ourselves. It's a deliberate manipulation of association to make ourselves look good and feel good. That Asimov quote about rooting for your team to prove you're better than the other person captures that ego connection. People really tied their self-esteem to these associations. Okay, so liking is powerful and can be manipulated. How do you defend against it? It's hard to dislike someone you genuinely connect with.
It is. And Cialdini says the defense here is tricky because it's usually reactive, not proactive. It's hard to spot the tactics before they work their magic.
So it's not about trying to consciously detect every compliment or mirroring attempt.
Not really. The key is to focus on the feeling. When you find yourself liking the person trying to influence you, maybe liking them surprisingly quickly or more intensely than the situation seems to warrant, That's your red flag.
That feeling of undue liking is the signal.
Exactly. When you notice that, pause and mentally separate the person from the request or the deal.
Separate the dealer from the deal.
Right. Ask yourself, putting aside how much I like this person, based purely on the merits of the offer itself, would I still do this? Would you buy that Tupperware if a stranger offered it? Would you agree to the proposal if you didn't feel such a connection to the presenter?
Focusing just on the substance of the deal.
It helps counteract the influence of liking that might otherwise cloud your judgment.
Got it. Okay, principle number 5. Authority. Directed deference.
This one taps into our lifelong training to obey legitimate authority figures. Parents, teachers, doctors, police. We learn early on that obeying them is generally right and beneficial.
It provides social order, structure, but our obedience can become automatic, another click-whir response.
The Milgram experiments are the absolute classic, chilling demonstration of this. Ordinary people were willing to administer what they thought were painful, potentially dangerous electric shocks to another person.
Simply because an authority figure in a lab coat told them to continue, even when the person being shocked screamed in pain.
They showed distress, they argued, but many still obeyed. Milgram's conclusion wasn't that people are inherently sadistic, but that they have an extreme willingness to go to almost any lengths on the command of an authority.
It's a powerful shortcut for deciding how to act, especially under pressure or uncertainty. Just do what the authority says.
But here's the crucial thing. Often, we react not to actual authority, but just to the symbols of authority. And compliance pros are very good at using these symbols.
Like titles: doctor, professor, judge.
Yes. These titles can trigger automatic deference even if the person's expertise isn't relevant to the situation.
Right.
That professor friend who noticed people became less critical once they knew his title. That's it. Even just being on a best doctors list increases patient compliance.
Clothing is another big one. Uniforms scream authority.
Police, military, even security guard uniforms. People are just more likely to comply with requests from someone in uniform, even for something unrelated, like picking up litter. Business suits work too. They convey status. That jaywalking study showed more people followed the guy in a suit.
And con artists use this. The bank examiner scam relies on fake uniforms or suits to signal authority and gain trust.
Then there are the trappings of authority. Expensive cars, jewelry, nice clothes. They signal status, and people tend to defer. Remember the horn honking study? People waited much longer before honking at a luxury car blocking traffic compared to an economy car.
These symbols can lead to really dangerous blind obedience sometimes, like that medical example of the nurse putting eardrops rectally.
Because the order came via phone from doctor. The symbol of authority overrode common sense and basic medical knowledge. It's shocking.
And that hospital study, where researchers, posing as doctors on the phone, ordered nurses to give an overdose of an unauthorized drug.
And most nurses started to comply. Blind obedience to perceived authority, even over the phone, violating multiple safety rules. It shows how powerful that deference is.
Okay, so how do we resist inappropriate authority pressure?
First step is just awareness, recognizing the power authority holds over us. Then Cialdini suggests asking 2 critical questions.
Question 1.
Is this authority figure truly an expert in this particular situation? Is their expertise relevant? Is that famous actor really an authority on the car engine he's endorsing? Or just a recognizable face?
Okay, check for relevance. Question 2.
How truthful can I expect this expert to be here? What are their interests? Do they stand to gain if I comply?
And compliance pros might try to seem more truthful by using that argue against own interest tactic.
Exactly. They might admit a small drawback, Listerine, the taste you hate, twice a day. Or Ava's saying, we're number 2, so we try harder. Conceding a minor negative makes their claims about the major positives seem more credible.
Like Vincent, the waiter Cialdini describes, he'd recommend slightly cheaper dishes initially.
Establishing himself as knowledgeable and trustworthy, apparently acting against his own interest. Lower bill equals lower tip.
Which built trust, so when he later recommended more expensive wine or dessert, customers were more likely to agree. And likely tipped better overall because they perceived him as honest and expert.
He leveraged perceived honesty created by seeming to argue against interest. So, when facing authority, ask, are they a relevant expert? And how trustworthy are they likely to be right now, considering their potential motives? Be extra cautious if they seem overly keen to prove their honesty by admitting small flaws.
Right. Okay, final principle. Number 6, scarcity. The rule of the few.
This is the idea that opportunities seem more valuable to us when their availability is limited.
The thought of potential loss, that fear of missing out, FOMO, it's a powerful motivator.
Absolutely. Compliance professionals use scarcity tactics all the time. The limited number tactic. Only 3 left at this price. The deadline tactic. Sale ends Sunday.
Creating urgency by restricting availability or time.
That Mesa Temple tour example is perfect. A Mormon temple, normally closed to outsiders, was open for just a few days after renovation.
And suddenly huge crowds showed up, people who've never shown interest before.
The opportunity became incredibly desirable precisely because it was scarce and temporary.
Car dealers use deadlines too. This price is only good if you buy today. Forces an immediate decision.
Designed explicitly, as the source notes, to get you to buy quickly without thinking too much. Child photographers claiming they'll burn unsold photos in 24 hours? Vacuum salespeople saying it's a one-time visit only? All scarcity plays.
So why is scarcity so effective on us?
2 main reasons, according to Cialdini. First, it's another mental shortcut. Things that are hard to get are often better, higher quality. So we use availability as a quick heuristic for judging value.
Makes sense. And the second reason?
Psychological reactance. This is maybe the more powerful driver. As opportunities become less available, we feel our freedom to choose them is being threatened.
And we hate losing freedom.
Exactly. We react against that loss by wanting the scarce item or opportunity more than we did before. This desire to preserve our options is fundamental. Brem's theory of psychological reactance explains this.
You see this even in toddlers, right? The toy behind the barrier becomes more desirable.
Classic example. The barrier restricts freedom, triggers reactance, increases desire for the toy.
In the Romeo and Juliet effect, parental opposition making teenage romance more intense.
Yes. The threatened freedom to be together fuels the desire. Studies actually back this up. Parental interference often correlates with stronger feelings between the couple.
Censorship works this way too. Banning information makes us want it more.
And we tend to view censored information as more valuable or even more true simply because it was banned. That book about marijuana became a bestseller after being censored.
That jury study about insurance is fascinating too. Jurors told to disregard that the defendant was insured actually awarded more money.
The act of censoring the information made it more salient and impactful due to reactance.
So when is scarcity most potent? Are there optimal conditions?
Yes. One is new scarcity. We value things more when they have recently become scarce compared to things that have always been scarce.
Like the cookie experiment. Cookies taken from a jar that went from full 10 down to nearly empty were rated as more desirable than identical cookies from a jar that always only had 2 cookies.
Exactly. The loss or dwindling availability is a stronger trigger than constant scarcity. This also relates to inconsistent parenting, creating a freedom, sometimes allowing snacks, then taking it away, enforcing the rule, feels like a loss and breeds more reactance and rebellion than a consistently enforced rule.
Okay, so new scarcity is powerful. What else?
Scarcity combined with social proof, that is, competition for the limited resource, that's a really potent mix.
We want something even more if we see others also wanting it.
Definitely. Think real estate agents. They use scarcity, just listed, combined with social proof. Lots of interest, another buyer coming soon. Telling a potential buyer another offer might be coming in or another viewing is scheduled right after theirs creates immediate competition for that scarce house, pushing for a quick decision.
That beef scarcity study showed the ultimate combination, right?
The double whammy. Customers ordered way more beef when told not only that it would be scarce, but also that this information about the scarcity came from an exclusive source. Scarce information about a scarce product. That was the most powerful condition.
Wow. Okay, so how do we resist scarcity pressure? How do we avoid getting swept up in the panic?
Cialdini suggests a 2-stage approach. First, recognize the feeling. When scarcity tactics are used, you often feel this internal arousal, maybe a bit of panic, definitely urgency. Use that emotional flare-up as your cue to stop, pause, calm down.
Don't make decisions when you're emotionally agitated. Get out of that buy quickly without thinking mode.
Exactly. Once you've regained some calm, rational thought, move to stage 2. Ask yourself why you want the item. What's the purpose?
Is it just to possess it or to use it?
Right. If you want it primarily for the satisfaction of owning it, maybe it's a rare collectible, an investment, a status symbol, then its scarcity is relevant to its value. You can factor that into your decision about its worth as a possession.
But if you want it for its function, to actually use it, drive it, eat it, wear it, read it.
Then remember, The item will function exactly the same, whether it's scarce or plentiful. That scarce cookie in the experiment didn't taste any better. Focus on the utility. Does it serve the purpose you need it for? Don't let the limited availability make you overvalue its actual function or make you buy something you don't really need just because it might disappear.
So focus on utility, not just availability, especially if the goal is function over possession. Slow down and think.
Precisely. Reciprocity, commitment and consistency, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity. 6 incredibly powerful principles.
Always at play, influencing us in countless ways every single day, in our personal lives, in marketing, everywhere.
And understanding them, really getting a handle on how they work, gives you, the listener, a significant advantage. You can spot them being used.
Make more conscious choices.
And maybe even use them ethically yourself, understanding the responsibility that comes with that power.
And Cialdini makes a point in the epilogue Modern Life, with its complexity and information overload, actually makes us rely on these click-whir shortcuts more than ever.
We need them to navigate the world efficiently. The real danger isn't the shortcuts themselves. It's when compliance professionals deliberately fake the triggers. Counterfeiting the signals, creating false scarcity, manufacturing liking, faking authority to exploit our automatic responses for their gain.
Which really leaves us with a final thought, a challenge for you listening. In this increasingly complex world, how do you strike that balance? How do you rely on necessary mental shortcuts while still maintaining the critical awareness to guard against those who would counterfeit the signals just to get you to say yes?
Something to definitely think about.
Thank you for joining us today. Buy the book at the 1 Hour Guide website for more business insights.